everyone. Wow, the time is finally here. Welcome to the 13th Spiritist Conference of Georgia. I'm Juliana, and I am honored to be here with you today. On behalf of all the Spiritist centers in Georgia, we would like to thank you and express our sincere gratitude for the presence of all of you and also for your interest in Spiritism. This event would not be possible without the help of our wonderful, dedicated, and hardworking volunteers. To you and each one of you, our sincere gratitude.
And my name is Flavio Zanetti, your other host, also honored to be here with you all. I have a couple of things I want to share with you. In order for us to have the very best experience, we'd like to remind you and everyone that you're welcome to ask questions and also post comments from whichever platform you're connecting with. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you so much, Flav. It's great to be here with you today. And just to remind you, this year's theme is Spiritism and Its Application, How to Handle Conflict. We have the participation of two wonderful speakers today, Júlio Carvalho and Dan Assisi. They'll be sharing their knowledge about important topics for our improvement. We really hope that you enjoy this. But before we bring those two wonderful guests on screen and dive into this year's topics, we would like to start with a prayer. Please join me. Dear Master Jesus, dear Heavenly Father, and our protector spirits, we express our gratitude for today and for this amazing conference. Thank you to all the volunteers, Lord. Thank you for all attending virtually today and the ones who will watch this. Bless each one of us, each one of them, with your love, your kindness, and your wisdom. May this day be a day that we praise you and we always keep you as the number one in our lives. Dear Lord, teach us to carry out our purpose. Open to us the golden doors of opportunity for service and help us to understand your will. May our work be the sacred workshop of infinite blessings. Convert our difficulties into encouragement and transform the obstacles along the way into lessons renewed. It's in your precious name, Jesus, that we thank you. Be with us always. So be it.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, thank you. What a wonderful day today. We're just so happy to be here, guys. And keep bringing on your comments. It is wonderful seeing all the hellos and everybody waving. And I'm even waving here as if people, oh, you can't see me. That's right. So this is wonderful. I'm so excited to have this very first online Spiritist Conference of Georgia. Dear Josada, thank you so much. Dear Luis, it's so good to see all the comments coming in. Keep them coming, please. Flavio, do you have a message for us?
We do, yeah. So in order for us to start this journey, right, we're going to have a beautiful message about the importance of the divine teachings. And a special thanks to a very good friend that I know just a little bit about him because he and I used to live together, right, a long time ago, Dr. Naul Fonseca, one of the members from our local Spiritist Center here in Massachusetts, or the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts. So with that, our tag folks, let's roll the video, please.
Where are we going?
To the planet Earth.
Is there where I'm going to be born?
Yes, my love.
Okay. All I need is that you introduce me to Jesus.
I promise. From the start of the Spirit's journey on their way to Earth, the Spirit's education process imprints on them positive experiences that will build new memories in order to balance the ones brought within. It is a process of spiritual re-education which will allow the construction of new emotions, of new thoughts, and of new values about the world and about the people that we will encounter. You must understand that when a body is created, the soul that incarnates with it has pre-existed the body's creation and come from space in order to progress. So, acquaint yourselves with your duty and then put all your love into bringing the soul closer to God. It is through education that generations are transformed and improved. For a new society, a new mankind is needed. For this reason, education from early childhood is extremely important. Give the children, whenever possible, the benefit of academic resources. However, before that, open the treasure of their souls, so that they are not deceived by the fantasies of intelligence when it acts without God. Educate the spirit. Turn on the light of the divine teachings, so that the earth becomes a radiant sun in the infinite, leading a human family integrated with the principles of life in Hosanna to its Creator. Spiritist education is like sun in the soul, enlightening the whole world under the constellations of stars in the sky, who are the blessed of the Lord, committed in His name for the urgent transformation of the earth into a world of regeneration and peace.
In the name of God, who you say you love, have mercy on me. Help me today, so I can help you tomorrow. I don't ask you for as much as someone might ask you on my behalf. I only ask for the minimum of what you can give, so that I can live and learn. All I need is that you introduce me to Jesus.
This is your role in the world. Let the children come to me.
Wow, that's emotional. I have watched that video about 10 times now, and every time I hear it differently, and I just thoroughly enjoy it. I like especially when it says that Spiritist education is indeed the sun of our soul, and it enlightened us. I just think that's so beautiful. So a big kudo here to all the youth educators, not only in Georgia, but throughout the world, taking care of our children. And especially in this time that we're going through this conflict, right, Flavio, of the pandemic. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit if your center, your Spiritist center, is doing anything about the youth education, how they're handling that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Juliana, folks. And absolutely, the video was amazing, right? To hear the little Liz talking on the video, it's just I got goosebumps, right? Absolutely. So when I look at what our committed, our dedicated, our driven, our loving educators have developed, right? This great pedagogy that has been adapted, so to speak, to a program that's being delivered 100% virtually for now. But the good thing is our kids are really loving the opportunity to stay connected, to stay engaged with our Spiritist community here in Massachusetts. So just to give an example, we currently have over 70 kids and teenagers that are enrolled and are really enjoying the opportunity, right? It's super exciting time for sure. And big thanks to our educators from the Ellen Kardec, right? Spiritist Society of Massachusetts.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think that's great. And it's very similar to what we're doing here in Georgia. And the educators are sending the lessons to the parents. Mm-hmm. So big shout out to our educators preparing the lessons and to our parents who are delivering the message of Jesus into their homes. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about, or I want to show you guys this role of the parents in all this. Let's go on to the next video, please.
Hello, dear friends. Welcome to the Spiritist Education for Children and Youth.
Hello, dear brothers and sisters. Now, we will review the importance of parents and their children's Spiritist education.
The role of parents is to guide and direct their children to goodness and integrity, bringing their hearts closer to God so that they become good people.
Dear parents, the best school of the world is still your homes. And God placed the children under your guardianship, in order for you to guide them to the good path. Do not fear. Have strength and courage so the world of regeneration can inhabit in your hearts. Be with me. I am with you. God bless all of you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love this part where it says that, to guide your children, bringing their hearts closer to God so that they can become good people. And sometimes as educators, when we are in our Spiritist Center, we try to expand so much on the content, right? The philosophy and the teachings that we forget. The important thing is just to talk about Jesus, right? Teach them to be good people. Right? That's amazing, right, Flavio?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Juliana. We all know that the parents' role in a kid's education is paramount, right? Not only from what we hear from the academic studies, right? All the research that's been done, through all time, but also what we hear from our Spirit Guided Manual that tells us that we, as parents, right, have a great job ahead of us to really point our children towards God, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And I want to hear from a student himself. So here is a 12-year-old telling us how Spiritism has changed his life. Let's watch.
Where are we going?
My name is Paco and I'm 12 years old. I'm here to tell you how Spiritism helps me become a better person. Before I started coming to SIR to learn about Spiritism, it was harder for me to donate and share things I have. And I would feel weird about donating things I liked a lot as a younger kid. After I started coming to SID, I learned to give to the people in need, and instead of feeling bad for donating, I felt amazing. Our lessons made me appreciate more all the things I have and made me realize how lucky I am to have everything I do while others might not. SIR also taught me to care more about others and to tolerate others' mistakes. I have learned not to judge people by their actions by putting myself in their shoes. For example, I helped my friend who got in an argument with someone, and I gave him advice about it and what to do. During the pandemic, I miss going to SIR and seeing all the people there, but learning at home has brought my family closer together. Overall, I'm grateful for all the things I've learned in SID.
Oh, Paco, I just squish him. He's just so adorable. And so his testimonial is just so inspiring and it's so heartfelt. So thank you, Paco, for taking the time and to just to tell us and to share and hopefully, tell other teens to join the Spiritist Center and the Spiritist movement in their cities, wherever it is that they are, right? So thank you again. I think this was a great introduction as well to our conference, right? We have one more, right? I think we are ready to have a conference or listen a little bit to somebody very famous, our beloved Divaldo Franco, right? So everybody ready? Here's a message from Divaldo about this amazing work that he does.
Acredito que quando nós nascemos, já nos encontramos dentro de uma programação elaborada no mundo espiritual. O grande desafio é utilizar do livre-arbítrio para seguir o objetivo que nos pode levar à plenitude espiritual.
Divaldo, what is this place? What is the mention of the way?
Desde muito cedo, na religião católica, onde me encontrava na infância e na juventude, eu admirava muito a vida dos santos. E oportunamente eu li a respeito de Albert Schweitzer, o grande missionário da África. Também me interessaram muitas vidas de apóstolos, de pessoas que se entregaram totalmente ao ministério de Jesus Cristo na Terra. Os mártires, aqueles heróis anônimos que somente ouvindo falar um pouco sobre Jesus, não trepidaram em dar a sua vida para que a mensagem deles se expandisse pelo mundo. E numa viagem que fizemos de trem, subitamente, eu tive como que um desmaio. E ao invés de continuar sentindo-me no trem, eu vi-me numa área bem ampla. E nessa área eu via uma comunidade enorme, movimentando-se. Achei aquilo muito especial, porque foi a minha primeira experiência de desdobramento da personalidade. Mas me chamou a atenção um senhor idoso cercado de crianças. Eu me aproximei e notei que era eu próprio já envelhecido. Nessa ocasião eu estava com 17 anos e aquele homem era já septuagenário. Então eu vi uma voz que me disse: isto é o que farás da tua vida. Serás educador de almas. Quando Jesus morreu, os seus discípulos, Pedro, João, Tiago, edificaram uma casa de amor entre Jerusalém e Jope. E essa casa foi denominada como sendo a Casa do Caminho. Tentando copiar o gesto heróico, nós pensamos em fazer um lugar onde todos encontrassem albergue, oportunidade de amar, mas sobretudo fossem amparados e tivessem as suas dores diminuídas. O nosso objetivo era promover essas famílias, para que mais tarde cada qual pudesse viver por conta própria, dignificando-as, fazendo-as cidadãs do mundo. E temos conseguido. Hoje, com as técnicas modernas da educação, a Mansão do Caminho deixou de ser um edifício, porque adquirimos uma área muito grande, de 80 mil metros quadrados, nos arredores da cidade de Salvador, e aí implantamos o nosso ideal. Iniciamos o sistema de casas-lares por volta de 1956 para atender a criança dando-lhe uma família. Fomos pioneiros nesse gênero na América do Sul.
Wow. Every time I see this video, I got goosebumps, folks. It's just incredible, right? It's incredible. It's an inspiring message from the Mansion of the Way, an institution that has been providing housing, education, and care for over 600 adopted children in Salvador. Dival himself adopted 600 children, folks, right? Through the system of foster homes and whatnot, right? So when you look at Mansion of the Way, it has really become this very large educational institution with 22 activities which provide guidance to more than 3,200 children and teenagers every day. By the way, everything is free of charge. Over 7,000 meals are distributed, right? And if you look at the video, show the message. To this date, more than 30,000 boys and girls have received a good quality education and care at Mansão do Caminho, or Mansion of the Way, through its many schools. And also, more recently, over 5,000 births have been provided as well. So again, it's an inspirational video. When we look at the works of Divaldo and all the folks that have helped contribute to the Mansion of the Way, it's really inspirational, right, Ju?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like to link that, when you think about Spiritism and its applications, right? There's nothing more than this amazing work of charity and love to apply Spiritism to our daily lives. So let Divaldo's work and all the volunteers there be an inspiration to each one of us, right? All right. So I guess so Flavio, we have a little schedule. We're going to do that. Tell folks what's going to happen today. Do you mind sharing with them what's going to happen next?
Sure. Happy to. Thank you. So before we jump on to what happens next, I want to give a great shout out to all of you that's joining us or that are joining us from your preferred platform from all over the world, right? We have hundreds of folks joining us. They're listening to us. They're watching us, right? From the different diverse platforms that we have. So with that being said, again, great shout out. Welcome. We're just starting this conference. So welcome and join us with that. So our very first guest that will have to come here with us, he has been participating on several other previous conferences, right? Like this one, Dr. Dan Assisi, right? And the topic that he's going to cover with us in a few minutes is No Peace But the Sword, Embracing Conflict for Progress. So stay tuned for Dan's talk real quickly, right? The other one, right, the other speaker that's also someone known by many of us, right? He's participated on this conference before, right? And he's Júlio de Carvalho from New Jersey. And the topic is Expectations and Frustrations, a Discourse on Tolerance. So those are the two main topics or feature presentation that will happen in a couple of minutes. Júlio, back to you.
Thank you, Flavio. I'm so excited. What a great schedule today. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to get rolling with our speakers. But before that, here's a present for all of us, a chance to calm our hearts and our minds and get ready for our wonderful speakers. So, dear Bing, please sing away.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the program. This is a good message for you. So much light is all around us, descending from God into our minds. So much light when we say a prayer, when my soul was sent to the eyes of God. So much light put into our prayers. The voice of God speaks to us and touches our hearts. So much light descending upon us. So much light. So much light. Please have fun.
Júlio, one day when I grow up, I want to be able to sing like Bing did. That's
I know, right?
An inspirational from my end, right? Maybe the next
Absolutely.
incarnation, I can develop some of the skills and come back and be able to sing because, this one, I can't, right? It's impossible. What about you?
I'm with you. There's a joke we say in Minas, where I'm from, that if you hear somebody singing and they're doing a very bad job, you just ask them, so what did you do with the money? And they're supposed to ask, what money? And you say, the money your parents gave you for your singing lessons.
I love that one too.
Of course, eating some pão de queijo, some cheese puffs, as we say that joke, because Mineiros do not live without cheese puffs.
Yeah, I'm not
So,
Mineiro, but I love that too. So anyways, it's
Yeah.
all good. So should we move on? Are
Absolutely.
you ready for the first feature presentation?
Yes, I'm looking
All right.
forward to it. Thank you so much. I'll see you
You
guys
bet.
soon.
All right, so next, folks, we have our very dear Daniel Assisi. So Dr. Assisi has spoken and presented Spiritism in over 60 cities in 4 different continents, right? His first book, A Road to Damascus, launches on December 12th, 2020, and it's already available for pre-order now. So you're welcome to go to Amazon and pre-order that. Dan is also a founding member of the Spiritist Institute, a good brother of ours in that endeavor there, and a board member for the California Spiritist Association. You can also find him, or Dan, as the other host from the Spiritist Conversations podcast. Dr. Assisi holds a doctorate degree in education and a master's in public administration with a graduate certificate in public policy from the University of Southern California. He lives in the beautiful, sunny, and warm San Diego with his wife, Nicole, and 2 beautiful sons. Danny, thank you so much. Let's take it away. Thank you. You're on mute.
It helps. It helps people when you unmute yourself.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavio. Always great to see you, friend. My brother from another mother in many different ways. And thank you and hello to all our friends in Georgia specifically today and all around the world who may be tuned in right now or who may be listening to this after the fact, because the nice folks in Georgia also are making this available as a recording later. So You don't have to have FOMO. You don't have to have fear of missing out if you have to step out for whatever reason. But thank you. I am really excited to be here with you today because it's just a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and talk about such an important and practical topic. Our topic today, it's going to be called Not Peace, but a Sword, right? So making progress with conflict. We're going to show you some slides in a little bit. But the idea here is that we are going to talk about conflict in general. And as you know, as you might expect, this is the time for us to talk about these things. The world is really sometimes upside down. There's so many things going on. There's so much animosity between people. There's so many different challenges taking place, so much conflict. So talking about it, even if we do it very shortly in 30 minutes of time, sounds like a great opportunity for us to start to think about things differently. And so I'm going to ask folks to put our presentation on the screen so that we can share some thoughts and some ideas. And at the same time, the benefit is that you don't have to look at me the whole time, right? So we can do that. So I'm going to ask my friends, there you go. So we're going to talk about, not peace, but a sword. But Dan, isn't this supposed to be about conflict resolution? What is this thing that you're doing? What do you mean not peace, but a sword? What are you talking about? Well, let's dive into it a little bit more and see what we mean. Okay, so hang in there with me. Hang in there with me. So I want to bring to the table a beautiful verse, in my opinion, from the Gospel of Matthew. And in it, in chapter 10, Matthew brings some words from Jesus that are really powerful. And perhaps you may think they are strange for our topic, but I think that they're highly pertinent. And he says, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." And he goes on a little bit more, and he says, "A person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Wow. Dan, what are you saying? I think you are rowing against the tide here, buddy. You are going exactly the wrong way, because it looks like what Jesus is talking about is actually conflict. It looks like in this quote that he's actually promoting conflict. But that's not the case. That's not the case at all. And that's what we want to talk to you about today. He's actually talking about conflict resolution. But for us to better understand that, we need to gain a couple of insights and different perspectives and change some of the mindset that we have so that we may better understand what we are really talking about here. So in the next couple of minutes, what we want to do is we want to dive into a couple of concepts that might help us understand this quote, this verse from Jesus a little bit, and why it's actually so very wise, because it has the potential to change our perspective of how we face life and the conflicts that we find along the way. So hang in there. And of course, you can always put in your questions on the chat, and we'll try to get them later on in the program. And so we're really, really appreciative of you being here today doing all of this. All right, so let's do this. Let's try to understand what exactly what Jesus was talking about when he was saying this. Well, first of all, we need to really get to the main points of our talk. If anything, what I want to have you take away from today, because I know that we have a very short amount of time to really talk about conflict, are three things. The first one is that conflict is natural. It's inevitable and it's necessary. There's no way we can avoid conflict in our lives. We'll talk more about that. The second piece that I want you to take away is that connecting with others is essential to a spiritual growth. There's no way that we can grow without connecting with others. And the third takeaway that I hope you walk out of here today with is the fact that communication is the key to overcoming conflicts and to connecting with others. We might not be able to dive deeper into these three things today, but if anything else, we want you to take away these highlights and just think a little bit about that. And let's start then jumping straight into things so that we can understand why conflict is such an important thing that we should pay attention to and perhaps change our mindsets around. All right, so when we're talking about peace and sword, we're talking about connection with other people, right? That means a relationship, and relationships will generally generate conflict. But before we talk about conflict, let's really define what conflict is. Let's understand conflict, because I think that most of us have a really different idea of what conflict could be. So let's dive in. At the heart of connection is conflict. And what is conflict? First, conflict is not drama. Most of us think of conflict as drama, and we don't want drama in our lives. So we're so afraid of conflict that we feel that there is going to create problems, that it will create an adversarial relationship. But in fact, conflict is inevitable. It would always happen because it is the result of a need not met. What do I mean by that? Every time that we have a need, something that we need for ourselves, a desire, a wish, a feeling that we feel is not appreciated or met, we enter conflict. And when we have a conversation with somebody else and we have different needs and we want different things, that is a conflict of interests. I want one thing, you want another thing. But that does not mean that it has to be drama. Just because we want different things doesn't mean we are going to create a tense and emotional environment or relationship or situation around it. We will not. Because if we let that happen, then conflict will disconnect us from each other. However, if we are able to coolly work through this difference of opinion, what is going to happen is we're actually going to come closer together, because we're going to have the shared experience and know that we can talk things through. So conflict is worsened by the lack of communication. When we don't know how to communicate and attain that mutual ground, we are going to create drama. But if we are able to work through conflict in a way that is productive, we are going to find that the connection between humans, like our connection between people, is going to be greatly enhanced, because we will know that we're just different people wanting different things, and that we can talk to each other and trust each other to navigate different situations. The challenge here, however, is that, to be honest with you, we have not done a good job training ourselves in conflict resolution. Think about this with me for a second. You have gone to school. You have learned about wonderful things. But most of the time, the things that you learn about, they really were about intellective things. You learn things with your mind, but you never were really taught how to deal with conflict. So much so that oftentimes in school, we are told that when we want something different from our friends, we should go talk to a teacher instead of working that out with a friend. So from the beginning, we are taught to create conflict and avoid the resolution of conflict. So what we have to do from our perspective as adults or young adults, as we all are, is to learn how to re-educate our emotions and our minds to deal and see conflict as a positive thing. Because you only grow when you learn something new. And you will only learn something new when you're exposed to something new. And you're only going to be exposed to something new when you're exposed to something different, something outside of yourself. So understanding conflict is perhaps one of the greatest things that we can do for ourselves, because we can take away this emotional charge that is around conflict and be able to navigate in such a way that we are always the winner in every conflict, because we grow. So how do we do that? Well, this is when we jump into the communications part. And let's be honest, most of our conflict is really an external conflict thing. We can have conflicts with ourselves, and we can talk about that at some other time. But most of the time, We think that our conflicts are with other people. We have trouble negotiating our relationships and our needs with other people. And so we butt heads. But if we're able to better communicate, especially when we're frustrated, especially when we are in pain or hurting, then we are going to have taken a great step towards handling conflict and growing from it. There are many different ways you can do that, right? It all starts, of course, with embracing conflict as a positive thing, the one thing that's going to teach you how to grow. But there are different methods. And today I want to show you briefly and share with you a quick method that is not Spiritist per se, but I think it's highly interesting and could be studied by anyone who wants, because it's also very simple. And it's called compassionate communication. It is a framework created by Marshall Rosenberg, who has already passed and discarnated. It was also sometimes referred to as nonviolent communication. But in this framework, he tells us about 4 important components that will help you and help us navigate conflict. And what are those? They're simple. That every communication with somebody else, when you're having these difficult conversations, when you want to express important things for you, could start with an observation, a factual observation. If somebody has hurt you somehow, many times we let the best of our emotions come up and say, you know what? You always do this. You always leave me behind, or you never ask me to do anything. These are emotionally charged statements. They are not observations. They are judgments. So whenever we start with that framework, whenever we start with that perspective of making a blame assignment right from the beginning, it will put somebody else in a defensive position too. And we are not going to be well-placed, well-positioned for resolution. So instead, what he suggests is to make a factual observation that will help us get to the core of the problem. Instead of saying, you always leave me behind, you say, hey, I noticed that last Friday you left and I was here at home, right? That's a very different piece because it's a fact that we can talk about. We can talk about facts more specifically. And then we go to phase number 2 of this framework, which is fascinating, is really great. It's about stating our feelings. And this is a difficult part for many of us because oftentimes we're not in touch with our feelings. But by stating our feelings, we are letting the other person know where we are coming from. So we have to be careful here because sometimes we use words that are not feelings. Sometimes we can say, you left me here last Friday and I feel like you don't love me. Well, that's not a feeling, right? That's a judgment again. What you got to talk about is how you feel when you say, you left me last Friday and that made me feel abandoned. That made me feel lonely. It's different because it's about you. In this argument, you are centering in yourself. And after you say that, you say, and I didn't like that feeling because I have a need. I have a need to be appreciated and to be loved or to be listened to. Or I have a need for autonomy to act on my own. Whatever it is, you need to identify what is it that you need and that you're not getting. And that's very important because sometimes we operate without understanding really what we need and what we want. And in that sense, we begin to go down a path that's not very productive. But if we make an observation and say how we felt and open ourselves up, make ourselves vulnerable to that person, saying how we felt ourselves. And then we say, and I have a need for acceptance. I never feel a need for caring and so forth. We are letting them know what is it that we need because they might not know because they might not be thinking about us, what we need. So we're letting them know what is it that we need. And then this is an interesting piece at the end, the 4th part of Rosenberg's framework here on compassionate communication is we make a request and we say, hey, last Friday you left early and I felt lonely and abandoned. And I have a need for affection and feeling connected to you and feeling loved. So do you think that next Friday when you come by again, you can stay a little longer? Or do you think that maybe you can let me know before you leave? Or can we plan ahead so that we have more time together so that I feel this feeling of togetherness? So when we have that conversation, in this framework, which of course we could unpack and spend a lot more time. You can do seminars out of this thing. It's a beautiful framework. When we start to find a framework that can help us ground ourselves when we are feeling stress and in the crucible, right, and our feelings are boiling, our frustration are boiling, and we can communicate that out to people, it helps them understand where we are coming from. And it helps them understand what is it that we need. Because if we don't tell them what we need, chances are they're not going to know. They can guess, they can make stories in their heads. And sometimes we make stories in the head about what do people do too. And stories in our heads never are a good thing. How many relationships go into trouble? How many friendships and so forth go into trouble because we start imagining and making stories in our head about what the person meant to say or did without ever asking them, without ever making a request. So when we are struggling to communicate our feelings in the relationship, it might be interesting for us to take a step back and spend some time going through this interesting framework to help us communicate what happened, how we felt about it, what is it that we need and did not get, or did not need and got, and make a request for next time so that your needs can be met. It's trickier than you imagine because we're not in touch with our feelings, we're not in touch with our needs, and we don't often see behavior as a result of a need not met. But when we start going through this framework, we begin to see that every behavior, including our own or the behavior of others, is because we have a need and we're trying to meet that need. I behave a certain way because I want a certain thing, because I think that's going to make me feel more loved, more accepted, because that will make me feel more independent. When we start to see people and their behaviors as a result of a need that's not met, we become more tolerant, we understand others better, and we're better able to deal with the conflict at hand, because it's not personal in the sense that people don't like you. They're just trying to meet the need of which you may not be aware. And sometimes you want them to meet a need that you're not telling them. So talking openly about it in a way that generates trust is very important. And this compassionate communicating strategy is a good way of doing that. So in the connecting to other people, it's important for us to know how we should communicate. And one way of doing that is using Marshall Rosenberg's compassionate communication framework. Now, why are you saying that then? Well, I'm saying that very quickly because, of course, in 30 minutes, it's really hard for us to cover the whole framework and practice the framework and so forth. But it's important for us to know that it can help us. And it's even more important for us when we consider the other C here of our equation, which is compassion. Compassion is an important component of charity, as we were talking about before. You've heard our folks here say earlier in introduction to this event, and how in Spiritism we try to place particular emphasis in charity, and that is to helping others, not just monetarily, but also emotionally and so forth. So now that we are closer at home, closer to our families maybe than ever before in terms of interacting with them during this pandemic, it's important to be compassionate. And compassion starts to come out of our understanding of others as beings who are also in evolution. Using that framework from Rosenberg, the compassionate communication framework, is a really good idea in my perspective, because it helps us to see other people as people who have needs and who have actions that they do to get to those needs, that they're just not flat, they're not fixed entities, that they're also growing, they're also trying to be happy. And for us Spiritists, another interesting part as well is there is an incredible question in our foundational book, the Spirits book. It's question 132. It is my favorite question of the entire book. And it's about the meaning of life, basically. When Kardec asked the more enlightened spirits, what was the purpose of our life, of our incarnations? The spirits replied that we are here to learn. We incarnate, we come into this body to learn new things and to develop an understanding of the world. And that made sense to me. However, there was a second part of the question that I didn't get, that I didn't really register until I read it many times later on. And that part was, we also have a second mandate. We also have the second thing that we need to do. And the spirits tell us that we need to play our part in the creation. What does that mean? It means that we're not just here for ourselves. We're not just here to grow. In our growth process, we're also supposed to help other people grow, because it is in that connection, it is that interaction that we learn and that we help others. So as we develop the ability to communicate effectively and we become more compassionate, we are fulfilling these two goals at once. We're learning how to handle ourselves, but we are also learning how to help others go through their own process of understanding their needs and getting in touch with their feelings. Because to be honest with you, if we don't do this now, if we are unable to navigate conflict now, it will show itself up again. Our natural response to conflict is to avoid it. But if we avoid conflict, if we avoid the big conflict in our lives, we may have to do them again. Take, for instance, this wonderful sentence for a great book, Action and Reaction, by the spirit Andrew Lewis through the mediumship of Francis Xavier. In it, the instructor Druzo tells us that we will have the fortune to meet up with our old enemies under the veil of temporary forgetfulness, thereby facilitating the precious opportunity to make amends. That is to say, we bring the conflicts that we have had from previous lives and that we have left unsolved into this life. The challenges, the relationships that we have that are hard from the beginning sometimes could be the result of conflicts that we have left unaddressed from before. So evading the problem now, especially now that we understand that there is such thing as reincarnation, that we are immortal spirits, means that we're just postponing its solution, that we are going to be forced to deal with later. So whether we like it or not, we have to go through conflict. Otherwise, conflict will come to us. If we don't solve it now, it will find its way back to us. And we are going to have to get back onto the horse and deal with it. So why not empower us to solve it now before it comes knocking at a door later on, asking to be solved in a much more difficult way? So the Spiritist perspective here is really interesting because it helps us understand the importance of communicating clearly and well, having compassion, connecting with others, if we are to really work in the second part of that question 132. That is, if we really are on helping others. Because there is no quote, quote, salvation, as the Spirit of Paul tells us in the Gospels Explained with Spiritism, if not through charity, that is, through love in action. And we cannot have really that love in action if we first don't have compassion, if we first don't understand where the other is coming from. So in many different ways, compassion is an important precursor to true charity, to true works for others. So to try to understand the other is an important component of our spiritual evolution. We must do that. We must comprehend that there's other people in the universe, and we must be able to navigate between us and them and find a way of communicating our needs and hearing their needs as well. I know that I am going fast, but I want to say that we are very fortunate because as we begin to unveil the reality that we are immortal spirits that transcend the space and this time, and that we have as many lives as we need to progress. As we begin to understand that is also true with everybody around us, we are given an incredible lens through Spiritism to deal with conflict. Because when we think of ourselves as these spirits that are temporarily here, we know that we have already overcome a series of many different conflicts in different lives, and none of them have really harmed us irreparably because we are here. And we also know, because we study the process of the evolution of the spirit is one of the very definitions that Kardec gives to Spiritism, right? This process of studying what we are, where do we come from, and where are we going to go, and how does that relate to incarnations. Once we do that, we begin to understand that we are only put in a place and a time to handle the challenges that we are capable of handling. Because if the challenge was beyond our ability to fulfill it, we would not be placed here, because God doesn't set us up for failure. God sets us up for success. Our whole lives, our whole incarnations, they were planned for us to face the challenges that we're facing now. That means that you were literally born for this. You were born to be here now solving the problems that you have because you're capable. You were prepared for this. That is why you are here. So along the way, why not equip yourself with the tools that you need to solve problems? Because sometimes problems nag at us, they get personal. But when we think about our spiritual essence, when we are able to zoom out with this lens that Spiritism offers us, and are able to understand that we have conquered many adversities before, and that we have a range of people supporting us to go through the evolutionary process, it takes a little bit of the edge off. And we begin to see that we are capable of handling conflict. We are capable of handling different things. When we wake up in the morning, when things seem too much, remind yourself, I have come to solve problems. I have come through this life to learn how to navigate changes, to be open and grow and learn new things. And for that, I'm going to have to deal with conflicts, external and internal. So as we do that, as we think about all these things, remember, if anything else, that conflict is natural, is inevitable, and is very important for your spiritual evolution. Remind yourself, too, that conflict does not and is not drama. And it doesn't have to be. You do not need to create emotional havoc or challenges because you simply have different needs. It's not that people don't like you or don't care about you. It's just that we have different needs. So look at conflict as different needs. One has one need, one has another need. Try to understand their need and try to convey your need. And when you talk about your needs, you will be surprised of how the tone of the conversation changes and how the relationship changes, because it's not one person against another. It's two people working together to solve and get what they think they need. When you see that through that lens, it fosters a collaborative approach as opposed to an adversarial approach. And remember that this kind of connection between people is essential, because it is connecting with others that we are exposed to different things, that we grow spiritually. That, no doubt, is why we're here, to learn from each other, to gain new understanding. And the way to do that is to do communication in an effective and efficient manner. And there are many different ways, and you can find your own. I just suggested one framework that you can use, the Compassionate Communication Framework today, to help you guide you through the process, especially when you are really emotionally frustrated. Having a framework helps you get out of that frustration mode and go into problem-solving mode. And when we do that, we begin to realize that what the Christ was really talking about was that we have a need to go through conflict, to understand what our needs are and what the needs of others are, that avoiding conflict and choosing sides, right, is not eventually the best way for us to go in the long run. It's important for us to understand that we're not here to pick teams. We're not here to always support our family, to always support our people and hurt others. We are here to navigate the different needs that we have and the different needs that other people have, and work collaborative, not in a competition. And that is like driving a wedge into the mentality that we have today, because we think that's a competition. We think that conflict's about winning or losing. But that's not it at all. And sometimes we think that peace is not talking to an opponent, is avoiding the issue altogether. And none of that is true, because the peace that comes from avoiding issues is no peace at all. Because as we know, through Spiritism and reincarnation, we might be faced, we might have to do this again in another life. And so we have to understand that and move to the next level. And in this short amount of time, we want to remind you of these beautiful words of the Christ. We also want to remind you that we owe our fates to no one but ourselves, that we have the tools, we have the ability, and we have the support to navigate conflict, which is nothing else but different needs at the same time, whether they're external or internal, through a very simple process of reflection and clearly stating and understanding what is it that we need from the world and from ourselves and putting out there. And I hope that more and more you may continue your journey of growth and understanding by demystifying what conflict really is and come to see as an important component of our lives, one that cannot and need not be based on drama, but it's really about navigating different perspectives, different points of views, so that we can learn and grow. So my hope for you, now that we have a different perspective, and that you have a life full of conflict, full of great productive conflict, which you no doubt will be able to navigate it because you know how to. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you guys later on.
Thank you, Danny. What a great and inspiring message, right? What a great approach to really helping us really make sense of the situation we're all in these days. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and the effort. And for the folks that are watching us, right? I'm sure you have some questions. I'm sure there's some things that are really popping in your heads after what Dan, just showed us. So please feel free to submit your questions, your comments. We have some time at the end to really go into more details. If there's anything that, based on what he just shared with us, that you'd like for us to go a little more to details or to really double click on that, would love to do that for you. So here's our invitation to do that, right? So thank you so much, Danny, once again for this inspirational message, right? Now that, in order to highlight the importance of being compassionate, as Dan mentioned, right? To always stay connected with our friends and family and loved ones, let's hear one interesting testimonial from one of the teenagers from the Spiritist Enlightenment and Renewal Society. So our tech friends, please let's roll the quick video.
Hello friends, my name is Lydia Bennett and I attend SIH Atlanta. I am currently a junior in high school and I will share with you today about why Spiritism is important to me. Spiritism is important to me because it has helped me grow as a person and connect myself more to God. Whenever I am stressed with school, Spiritism is always here to help me stay calmer. For example, tests, homework, and exams. Since I am a high school student, there is a lot of pressure, so we all need to have some sort of guidance. We all need Spiritism in our lives. Since the pandemic, I have gone into many online Spiritism groups and made new friends. It is really nice because you get to connect with other people from other states and share what you know about Spiritism with them. Teenagers, I hope that I connected with you.
All right. What a quick, albeit very impactful video. Thank you, Lydia, for your testimonial. And before we welcome our next speaker, let's watch another quick video. Júlio, I'm not sure about you, but I'm loving these great videos, right? These great animation videos. And I hope you are as well. And so is everybody that's watching us. And again, really great videos that really make us really see the message in a very different angles, right?
Absolutely. And to hear from teenagers, I love when they participate, and we talked about conflict and being compassionate, and just to see how these families are doing well and, being good to one another and working together with their educators from the spiritual centers to be able to pass on the content, right, of the spirit of Spiritism, but mainly the moral teachings of Jesus in their homes during these hard times. I am very happy as well, Flavio. Looking forward to the next video.
All right. So speaking of next video, I think, Júlio, Did you see the script before you sent it? I think you did. Anyways. Well, before we welcome our next speaker, let us then watch another quick video. Let's look at where we are right now, right? 2020 pandemic, how much the world has changed since this new reality started. The next video is going to highlight 3 loving mothers talking about some strategies for us to better leverage the gospel, Spiritist teachings, in order for us to really cope and overcome these challenging times. Our tech friends, let's roll the video, please.
We'll go to the Sunday school educator's house to give out candy. Is your Sunday school still holding classes? Not in person. When my Spiritist Center shut down because of COVID-19, the Sunday school coordinator organized a WhatsApp group. Educators use the group to post lesson plans so parents can conduct Sunday school activities at home. We only began using those lesson plans after we got a message from one of the Spiritist educators. Why? What did the teacher's message say that made you change your mind? The message began saying that because of the pandemic, the parents became God's hands. As parents, we're responsible for sharing God's blessings, including Jesus' moral teachings, with our children. The message warned us that as parents, we're entrusted with the mission of helping our children's spirit to develop, and will regret deeply if we fail this task. Finally, the educator reminded us that we're all immortal spirits who have lived before and have many imperfections and much to learn. So we need to take advantage of the childhood to correct the spirit's bad tendencies and reform flawed characters. And why is that? Because the process of incarnation disturbs the spirit. So infancy makes the spirit more capable of absorbing teachings and more open to parents' influence. This confusion dissipates as the body develops. When the organs mature, the character of the spirit awakes, the spirit regains its past characteristics and becomes resistant to new ideas. And what is the structure of these religious classes? We divide the classes in 15 minutes intervals. First, we pray and sing gospel songs. Then, we tell a story about Jesus' life or about Spiritism principles using objects and encouraging children interaction. After that, the children engage in activities to explore the topic while playing. And are your children able to learn those complex teachings? Well, they learn the feel of the Spiritist principles, but the point of the class is to raise good human beings. The focus is on the moral. We want to educate the spirit. It is challenging, it takes time and patience, but as Jesus put it, the burden with him is lighter.
All right. Thank you for all the great artists and tech gurus for having created this amazing video of these 3 loving mothers really helping their kids cope with the situation that we have these days. All right. So next, we have our very dear friend Júlio Carvalho with the topic Expectations and Frustrations, a Discourse on Tolerance. Before we welcome Júlio here, let's say a few words about Júlio. Right? Júlio is the founder and co-director of the Spiritist Center Divine Light, located in Newark, New Jersey. He's also a member of the Tri-State Spiritist Federation, where he works actively in the Department of Public Speaking, providing training courses for Spiritist workers. Each year, he participates in the national and international congresses representing the U.S. and the TSSF. Professionally, he's a licensed clinical social worker with 20 years experience in public speaking in the field of mental health, group administration, and emotional well-being. He has worked for the Trinitas Regional Medical Center, a Union County jail, for the past 12 years. And currently, he's a psychotherapist for Compassionate Care Hospice. Academically, he's a trained stationary engineer, has a bachelor's in biology and a master's in social work from King University in New Jersey. He has spoken in many states in the US, and because he speaks 4 languages, he regularly attends to speaking engagements abroad as well. He's been married for 15 years to a beautiful wife and has 2 beautiful children. Folks, let us welcome our dear friend, Júlio de Carvalho. Júlio, take it away, my friend.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start our talk by initially congratulating the Spiritist Centers of Georgia that are involved in this conference. It is not easy to develop this task and carry throughout its mission. I want to thank the co-host and the host for doing a wonderful job of presenting ourselves and keeping the mood of this event as uplifting as it can be. I also want to express my gratitude to my great friend Daniel for sharing with us his knowledge, and also to commend him for the publication of his book, The Road to Damascus. Excellent work, my friend. The topic that we reserved for this conference is entitled Expectations and Frustration.
Júlio, I'm sorry
on
to interrupt, my friend, but there's a small issue with your audio. I'm not sure if there's an issue with your audio or your microphone. The audio is a little staticky or choppy. Maybe we could spend a few minutes, fine tuning it, so folks can enjoy your talk with the 100%, right? So I'm not sure if you can
do me a favor, Flavio. Would you please do?
You've already solved it. I think it was
yes, but do me a favor. Do not mute your microphone. This happened before. Yeah, there's something to do with Zoom, and at times, if I'm the only one speaking, then the static starts. So I kindly ask you to not mute your microphone, and the sound should be fine.
Let's try that. Sorry to interrupt, my friend. Please take it away again.
Not a problem. The topic is frustrations and expectations, a discourse on tolerance. What most people don't realize is that the conflict that our friend Daniel expressed so well results from our own expectation.
Sorry, Júlio, it's us again. Yeah, when you keep your microphone on, or in your ear at least, it seems to be much better. I don't think we were muted this time. So I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
No problem. The frustration that we experience results from the expectation that we have other people's behavior towards us. Once again, our frustration is a result of expectation, unmet expectation that we place on others. As a result, whenever you are in a relationship, a familial relationship, a professional relationship, a social relationship, the quality of the relationship will be mostly based on the expectations that you have of these individuals towards you. So when you create high expectations, you are actually setting yourself up for a lot of frustrations. Reason being is because individuals are not obligated to attend to your needs. So if you create an expectation how they should behave towards you, you will experience most likely frustration. To place expectations on coworkers and your friends and relatives, it's a perfect conditioning for you to be very disencouraged in living with others. Once again, reason being is because people are not obligated to meet your expectations. So we should have a discussion on how we should relate with others based on our ideas that we have of others. If you are a individual who has no understanding of other people's weakness, most likely you will be very frustrated with people all the time. And what this knowledge offers, the Spiritist philosophy, is that it explains in great details that we all have our own faults. And as a result, there are other people who have to put up with our own imperfections. And since you have this relationship in which others have to put up with you, you will understand that now it's your time to put up with their problems as well. When we are spiritually immature, we expect individuals to think like us, to speak like us, to act like us. And when they don't, you want to see them as far as possible from you. When we are spiritually mature, when we are psychologically mature, we have a complete understanding of these relationships because now we have a comprehension that we only grow with different people. Where everywhere you look in nature, you see diversity working together in solidarity. When you dive into the world of microcosm, what you see are the elementary particles. You see protons, neutrons, electrons, and they are diverse particles. They're very different from one another, yet they are solidarity, which means they have a common goal. They have a common objective, and the objective is the existence of the atom. When you look at the world of the microcosm, Earth, planets, moons, stars, galaxies, these heavenly bodies are very different from one another, yet they are solidarity towards one another. In other words, they have a common goal, which is to keep the harmony of the movements. These are different heavenly bodies working together in order to promote cosmic harmony. If the moon decided, I cannot keep up with Earth. I think Earth is too different of me. She has a different way of circling the sun. I could care less about what her objective is. Let me go on my own orbit. You know what would happen? The entire solar system will be affected. If you look at the world of a microcosm, at the elementary particles, if electrons said to themselves, you know what, I cannot tolerate anymore the protons and the neutrons, what they do, it's less important. So I'm the most important particle here in this atom. You know what would happen with the entire universe? It would cease to exist. Wherever we look, we see diversity working together for a common goal. So in our family, in our social relationships, in our professions, if we want people to talk like us, to think like us, to behave like us, we are not looking to be with others, but rather to be with a reflection of who we are. Get into a deeper level of this argument. One can surely state that at times when you like someone, you don't truly like the other person. You like on the other person what you see of yourself. Because the minute that person stops listening to the kind of music that you listen to, or they stop dressing the way you dress to, or they change to a different political party that you used to like, Suddenly, our likings for them diminish. Our passion for them, our friendship for them lessens in intensity. So one can say that we liked on them, it was not necessarily them, but rather what we saw of ourselves in them. But to be spiritually awakened is to realize that we all find ourselves in different levels. And most likely, the individuals who are below you in the ladder of evolution don't comprehend the way you talk, the way you behave, or your predilections. Most likely, those who are above you, you also have a very hard time understanding the way they talk, the way they speak, their choices in life. To be tolerant is to understand that people are in different levels of evolution. To be tolerant does not mean that you agree with what everybody's saying, but rather you're not against them. And for that, my friend, it takes spiritual maturity to understand that people have their own background, their own set of experiences that make them different than you. The supreme intelligence of the universe did not create us in series, like Ford creating its cars. We are very different people from one another. Our cultural baggage, the environmental influences that we have received in our childhood through our parents, through our neighborhood, and most importantly, the collection of our reincarnation experiences make us all very different from one another. So when I'm able to welcome difference, then I'll be able to tolerate, to welcome difference, to see to see richness in difference. Because if I talk to someone that talks like me, that thinks like me, I think I'm talking to myself. Why do I even bother asking you a question when I know exactly the way you think? I want to have a discussion with someone that sees things from a different perspective. And that result is that my opinion might not prevail, the other person's opinion might not prevail, but the combination of these two opinions that will be much better than the individual opinions. But to have this mindset, to have this perception of any relationship, it takes spiritual maturity. And that's what the Spiritist philosophy nourishes one when we read the literature. As a matter of fact, Allan Kardec stated that one of the natural consequences of understanding this natural law, the Spiritist information, is that you will be more tolerant towards the imperfection of others. Now, let's remind everyone that to be tolerant, it does not mean that you're going to accept what other people say, or you're going to be complacent, because that would be a great mistake. For example, in our family, as a parent, as a father, as a mother, you should not tolerate the wrongdoings of your child. Because to tolerate the wrongdoings of your child, it would be for you to accept all the mistakes they do. You're not there to tolerate it. You are there to educate it. You are there to be a observer who will admittedly request from this child their best behavior. That is the mission of parents. But when you're dealing with grown relatives, on the other hand, that's a different story. Because you cannot demand from your father, from your mother. You cannot demand from your in-laws a certain kind of behavior. And by demanding this behavior, the result is a lot of frustrations. Most people, because they don't have this understanding, they expect others to behave in a certain way. What the result of that is that they deprive themselves of many social gatherings. Thanksgiving is coming up, and how many families will be broken down? People would not meet around the table for Thanksgiving dinner just because they cannot tolerate the other person's political party, the other person's job, the other person's way of thinking, a way of speaking, and pride themselves habits. How you agree with what they do. It means that you have this perception in which you're not against them, but you understand where they come from. You understand their way of thinking. And as a result, you're able to live with everybody, people from all walks of life. At your job, to tolerate your coworker, it means that you will learn their different ways of thinking, their different ways of acting towards you. It doesn't mean that you're going to be complacent with everything they do. Just imagine if you are the boss. Your employees are being paid, and you should demand of them what they're supposed to do. Imagine if someone thinks that to tolerate is to actually allow a worker to arrive late every day. What would that do to the rest of the team? It would ruin the team. So to be tolerant workers, it means that you see their potential for improvement. And when they make a mistake, it's like my friend Daniel said, it's all about the way you're going to handle the conflict. There is a way you can communicate with them. What happens, unfortunately, in most companies, in most job meetings, people only meet just to complain. And when someone says it's time for a team meeting, everyone already expects a big complaint from the boss without realizing that recognition is of great importance. So when you create this atmosphere of gratefulness, of gratitude, in which you recognize people's qualities and virtues all the time, when there is a moment for you to call their attention because they are not meeting the job's expectation, they know that this is about that occurrence specifically, and not necessarily they are trying to put you down or humiliate you in front of the other workers. The same principle applies at home. When you create an atmosphere of gratitude, of thankfulness, in every little detail, you always express your thankfulness. Thank you that you brought me water. A thank you that you've cooked. A thank you that you have cleaned the yard. A thank you for taking the garbage out. When there's a moment in which you actually have to call the attention of your spouse, of your husband, they will know that this is about the specific occurrence and not necessarily that you are against them. With our social relationships, with our friends, if you express your gratitude, if you tell them how important they are to you, if they know that you always try to see the best of them, when there is a moment in which you actually call their attention for something wrong or a potential of wrongdoing, they know that you're truly concerned about their well-being, not necessarily that you are against them. So to tolerate someone, it means that you see their potential and you're not against them, but also that you have the humbleness that they can teach you as well. There's always room to learn. We can learn from anyone, from even an animal. I've explained here different times in our lectures and how come even a dog can actually teach us so many different things. It's the perception of humbleness. So when we do not create this expectation that others should be perfect around us, the result of that is that we're able to live with people from all walks of life. Think for a moment of our model, Christ himself. Was he a tolerant individual? Of course he was. He was in so many different ways. We learn here in the Spiritist philosophy that Christ is such a transcendental being that what we know of Christ, it's only what our mind can actually absorb. Christ is much more than what we think Christ is. As a matter of fact, it's one of the individuals that it's most spoken and written about, and yet the one that is most misunderstood as well. And the reason for that, it's because his teachings are so hard to put into practice that people have modified his message instead of modifying themselves. They have molded his teachings to fit their passion instead of molding their passions in order to fit its teachings. What we learn of Christ is that he was the co-creator of our planet Earth, that he has removed from the cosmic dust the particles that were needed in order to compose this planet together. And just to put into perspective what we learned from cosmology, that took place approximately 4.5 billion years ago. If we bring anthropology here to this argument, we have learned from paleoanthropologists that our evolution as Homo habilis started approximately 2.5 million years ago. If you put 2.5 million into 4.5 billion, that is absolutely nothing. It's a very small percentage within that number. And the point I'm making is that Christ, this entity that we speak so much and understand so little, was already perfect so long ago. So the question is, could have Christ done his job of disseminating the natural laws of love on his own? Yes, he could. Obviously, he could. But what does he do? Well, Christ chooses 12 disciples, 12 apostles. And who were these individuals? Well, these individuals were just like us, full of imperfections. These disciples, they betrayed Christ. These disciples promised Christ one thing and behaved completely different. And Christ had this ability in which we also have, which is pre-science, meaning he knew before what the apostles would do in the future. So he knew that Judas would actually betray him. He knew that Peter would abandon him. And he was with them for 3 years. It's not that these apostles came with the mission to abandon or betray Jesus, not at all. But when you understand about human imperfections, you can actually foresee the future. For example, if you have a child and you take that child to an ice cream shop, you already know which flavor that your child will pick. If they have strawberry or vanilla, they know by the likings of your child that child would pick strawberry ice cream. So if you multiply this capability by 1,000-fold, I'm just throwing a number there, which we cannot measure because Christ is a transcendental being. But the point is, he knew the tendencies, the inclinations of his apostles. So he knew beforehand that they would curve into their weaknesses and would betray him and would abandon him. What did Christ do? Did Christ run away? Did Christ abandon them? Did Christ substitute them? No. Christ actually promised them, I will be with you until the end of times. At times, we want those who are different of us to just disappear, to run away, to stay as farthest as they can from us, not knowing that we can only grow when we're dealing with different people. You see, my friends, diversity is such an important thing that if the fingers of my hand were all index fingers, I would not be even able to grab a glass of water. I would not even be able to hold my phone if all my fingers were the same size. Diversity. These 12 disciples, they were very complicated people indeed. At the last passage, we see that Christ goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he is praying to teach us in difficult moments, we should elevate our thoughts to be in connection with the supreme intelligence. And he asks 3 disciples, James, Peter, and John, to actually go with him and watch, meaning to be alert, to be vigilant. And so Christ is preparing for his sacrifice. And then they come back and sees the 3 disciples were sleeping. And Christ says, you are not even able to watch for 1 hour, meaning you're not even able to be alert, be vigilant for 1 hour. how can I expect of you to do more things? And that this was the teacher actually educating his students. So when we have the expectation that people have their imperfections, people will make mistakes. That's guaranteed. Your wife will make mistakes. Your husband will make mistakes. Your children will make mistakes. Your friends will make mistakes. This is guaranteed. When you have this expectation, when that actually happens, you would not be frustrated. And why? Because you do not expect them to be any different. You know inside yourself that people have their own struggles. When you truly know this, you do not create any expectations. Please do not misinterpret me. I'm not saying that you should hope that people make mistakes towards you. You're not wishing for that, but you have an expectation that people actually will make mistakes. That would happen. But unfortunately, most people act just on the contrary. They act as if their friends or their relatives have written a contract saying, you can trust me always, you can always count on me, I will always help you, and that will not happen. But also, since this is a Spiritist meeting, a Spiritist conference, I want to alert all of us that to be tolerant, it doesn't mean that we're going to accept everything people tells us, and especially Spiritist speakers. I see with growing concern that when some speakers speak of their own mind, of their own interest, of their own ideas from the Spiritist pulpit, people might understand that this is Spiritism. That is not tolerance, my friends, because we have a contract with the Spiritist philosophy. We cannot, in the name of tolerance, allow others to change the fundamental principles of this philosophy. Just think for a moment if someone actually speaks on the topic of reincarnation and decides that reincarnation is truly not real, or it could be possible, but we should tolerate them. Obviously, this is not tolerance. So to finalize our topic here, do not create expectation on others. Actually, you can expect of them to make mistakes towards you, your coworkers, your friends, your family. But when they act on this way and you truly know your own imperfections, you will not be against them. You will understand them, which that will be the application of Spiritism in our daily lives. Thank you for these 30 minutes of your attention.
Thank you so much, Júlio. That was amazing, very inspirational, and I love the comments. There were a lot of comments. If you didn't see them, check it out. A lot of people saying thank you and saying that they're enjoying it. So this is great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, indeed, Júlio. Great approach, friend Júlio, from your end. And please don't go yet, because there's a lot of questions. We've received a couple here that would like to start. But before we do that, I'm also going to invite everybody else, right? Everybody, again, if you have questions, if you have anything you'd like to ask, or any comments, more than welcome. Please do so via your preferred platform that you're joining us today. We have the next almost a little less than an hour to go over these questions. But before we do that, there's great comments I see from folks, very enlightening. I mean, folks are really sharing their comments. May God bless you all, Júlio, right? Thank you for your time. Again, there's a lot of great comments that I see here on the stream, which is a good segue for us to start the questioning. And by the way we've planned this is not only to be a Q&A, but rather a conversation. So the goal here is for us to really drive some conversation. So it's not a question either for Júlio or for Dan or for anybody else in particular. This is supposed to really steer a conversation. So with that being said, the first one that I'm going to just show us here came after Dan's talk, right? And it goes somewhere like this. With so many wars and conflicts that are dressed in a religious context, what would you suggest we should do for us to think differently about what has happened to our history? How about now in modern times? What can we do, Danny? Can you walk us through? Or again, Júlio as well. What can we do?
First of all, hi, Júlio. Good to be on the same screen with you, my friend. I miss you.
Likewise.
Friends on screen here. So I love the question because I think it talks about us looking back and reflecting on our history. And anytime that we reflect on history, on our doings, on the past, I think that we come out better for it. I don't think that it changes anything, though. I do think that it's evidence of how we have been unable to navigate conflicts well, right? I think that our whole point is, it will continue to be, that we are always going to have conflicts because there are difference of opinions, there are difference of needs. But if our history does anything, is show us how we have missed the opportunity to truly navigate a consensual way of arriving at shared meaning. We have failed oftentimes to really consider and find a middle ground. Granted, I don't think that it's possible perhaps on our level of evolution to find a middle ground 100% of the time, but I think that when we look back in history, we can kind of see that behind it all, there's a lot of our arrogance, if I may say so, of thinking that our way, as Júlio was saying, like our immaturity, right? To think that there's only one way of doing it's our way of doing. So while it's good to look back at history and recognize the opportunities that we may have missed, I wouldn't read too much into it other than, hey, the way to prevent that from happening again is working on ourselves here and now, learning how to address the conflict that is to come, because we cannot do anything really for the stuff that's behind us, but we can look forward.
It's a great point, Danny, because again, for us not to look at history and honor and respect and look how we can learn from it, so we can apply in today's world, right? They'll be foolish, right? If we don't do that. But Júlio, I wanted to stitch that with your comment on spiritual immaturity. There's actually a question for you that came here, right? You mentioned that we're still very spiritually immature, right? Stitching to the comment that the question I made to Dan, right? Can you recommend some guidelines or best practices for us to really achieve this maturity and hopefully one day do not really, start this, other new conflicts that's based on XYZ, agendas, right?
My friend Flavio, would you be so kind and repeat the question again that was for Dan?
Absolutely, yeah. So the question for Dan was, oops, I missed that. Yeah, so it's here. With so many wars and conflicts that are dressed with a religious context, what would you suggest we should do to think differently about what has happened to our history and how to apply that in modern times? So to really look at all these wars that have happened before, right? I'm going to even adventure and say that a lot of these wars, there were agendas behind them. They were just dressed with a religious context. How do we look into that and tie that to what the concept that you drove, which is the spiritual immaturity? How do we achieve maturity so we don't really have the same mistakes again? Does that help?
It helps. One of the things we have to consider when we look back at history, the usefulness of these tragedies, because nothing goes useless when it comes to human experience. And for those of you who have read the Spirit's book, there is the third part called Moral Laws. On chapter 6, it's called Law of Destruction. Inside that chapter, there is a subtitle called Wars. And then Allan Kardec has the wisdom to ask the highly evolved spirits, what was the need for wars? And the need of wars is to promote freedom and progress. So when you look back in history, there were lots of wars in which promoted freedom and progress. Now, does it mean that freedom and progress only comes when there are wars? Absolutely not. But unfortunately, due to our spiritual immaturity, one of the means for us to arrive at freedom and war and freedom and progress is through wars. As we evolve, we become more and more understanding that we are just one race, the human race. And instead of looking at our differences as obstacles to our relationship, we will actually welcome them. There was a very famous scientist, he died in 1996, Carl Sagan, the co-creator of the series Cosmos. And he talks about this picture that was taken from Voyager 2. This was a spacecraft that was the first of human instruments to leave our solar system. And when the instrument, the Voyager, was about to leave the solar system, he was hanging about Neptune, the planet Neptune. Carl Sagan asked the US government to actually put the cameras of that spacecraft facing Earth so we can get a less picture of the Earth before he left the solar system. And the picture that came out, it was actually a blue dot in the beam of light. And what he says about that blue dot in the beam of light is that we are all inside this little blue dot. All of us, as families, as friends, as one race. I think science points so much how we are all from the same origin. Even when you study paleoanthropology, we get to understand that we all evolve from Africa. So these differences that we see in ourselves, skin color, religion, and political preferences, should not be an obstacle for our relationship, but rather a perfection of our union, a perfection that we welcome differences because we grow from them. Once again, that doesn't mean I accept totally what you say, but I understand where you come from, and from that we can grow.
Awesome. That's great. That's a great way to see that, Júlio. And Dan, any words from you before we switch it over to the next question here?
No, I love that. I love the pale blue dot. I love that Júlio brought it up because it's such a beautiful moment. It was the first time in our history that we had a picture over the Earth as a whole, right? We sometimes forget that, but it was the first time in our entire history that we had a picture from the outside. And how telling is it, right? That it took us thousands of years to be able to see that distance. And it's a short read. It's like a little essay. It's like a 5-minute read. And if folks want to get a little tear-eyed there, I did when I read it. It was absolutely beautiful. So I love that Júlio brought the perspective up. Thank you, Júlio.
Awesome. So one more here for you guys, for both of you, right? Let's look into a more passionate or compassionate communication, rather. How could we use Rosenberg's nonviolent communication strategies in order to help us with, interfaith or interreligious dialogue, or I would even venture to say, in this day and age that we live in these days, right? With racism, with the different, status that we have in our societies today, right? How do we leverage that body of work, right, from Rosenberg's in order to really help us be more prepared, right, to talk about, within our communities of faith, within our Spiritist centers, in our temples, in our society overall? How do we use that to come together as a community, accepting each other rather than just trying to impose anything to others?
So I got strong feelings here. So just because we're just between us and we're not going to tell anybody, right? I think that just the three of us here, I think that, one of the biggest challenges that we face as a humanity is that we have come to a point where we think that religious thinking needs not be justified by reason and logic. And so we've got to such a tough place that people sometimes hold on to their religious beliefs, thinking that they do not need substantiating, that the ultimate truth. And when we are in that spot, when we think that that's the ultimate truth and we don't need to think about it, people sometimes get to this place where they don't think that there's anything to give on that front, right? And so they automatically think that everything that they're sitting on is right and everybody else that thinks differently, because they're still immature as spiritually, as Júlio was saying, everybody else is wrong. So So I think that one of the biggest damages that organized religion has done to us is that it has offered us little room to move on conversations, because we think that religions are the ultimate truth. And as long as we think that an individual religion is the ultimate truth, we are not going to really make progress, because we think that we are justified in doing whatever it is that we understand that religion to tell us about, right? It's important to unpack this a little bit and understand that every time we read something, that we read about a religion, or whether it's Spiritism or something else, and you can argue whether it's a religion or not, like, it's our interpretation of what we read, right? But sometimes we take that to be the ultimate truth. And whenever we get stuck in this place, this is the ultimate truth and I cannot move away from it, we sometimes risk misunderstanding that piece and creating, a lot of damage for different things. What I like about the Rosenberg, the Marshall Rosenberg compassionate communication piece, is that not because it's the only way to do it, because absolutely not, but it leads us to think about what are we feeling and what do we need. So it leads us to a conversation first with ourselves before we have a conversation with somebody else, right? Because unless we know exactly what is it that we need and are willing to move, we cannot make the request. If we're unwilling to change ourselves, the request that we make of others is probably less likely to be helpful. So all that to say that in the field of religious thinking, I think there's an opportunity for us to really revolutionize how we have done business in the past, so to speak, as a society, and not just think that just because we heard it a certain way from a certain person at a certain time, we know everything, right? And I think that that's the challenge with religious thinking, is that when people engage in dialogue, oftentimes they're not engaging in dialogue, in true dialogue. They're engaging in persuasive dialogue. They want to persuade somebody else that their religion is better or should be embraced by somebody else, right? And so it's a really touchy piece, to the point that I think that religion is going to be the last hiding place of ignorance, because you are justified based on your beliefs to say whatever it is, and you don't have to listen to anybody because you think you've got it from God, right? And so unless we step away from that place of immaturity, we are not going to be able to make progress in interfaith peace, because we're still going to be focusing on what divides us versus what unites us. Right? Yeah. Right. And so I think that the Rosenberg framework, the compassionate communication piece, is nice because it tries to find the middle ground. The trick is knowing what is it that you're willing to give and that you can give, right? Because sometimes you're not willing to give, and that's okay too, like Júlio was saying. Sometimes there are things that are so core to you that at that moment in time, you're not willing to give on. And it's okay for you not to give on things, right? But it's okay for you also to give on things if you feel like you need to. So it's really an inward voyage that each one of us has to undertake to understand first who we are. Because if we don't understand who we are and why we are that way, if we don't comprehend why do we think the world specific way, if we don't know why we believe in things the way we do, it will be very difficult for us to find common ground.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to jump in just because something caught my attention here. When you say this inward voyage, it actually connects to a question that somebody posted online. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one, if you don't mind. So the question is, do we solve problems loving each other and also respecting our limits of inner transformation? And how can we improve? So again, do we solve problems loving each other and also respecting our limits of inner transformation? How can we improve? Júlio, do you mind taking this one?
Not a problem. Let me explain to you guys my challenge with events like these. Whenever we speak, the first thing that we have to consider is who is our audience. And I checked here on YouTube and Facebook, and it seems that our audience right now is composed of 40 members. And most likely, they're all spiritists. And if that's the case, the answer is very simple. Just practice what Christ had said. But since the event it's done in English and the audience is for all, Allan Kardec in the Medium's book told us that for those who are content with their religious belief, we should not at all waste our time in trying teach them what Spiritism has to say. And why? Because they're satisfied with their religious philosophy. We should aim Spiritist teaching to free thinkers. And who are free thinkers? Free thinkers, most likely, they don't have a religious background. So if I mention the word Jesus Christ in any of these words that has a cultural baggage with it, I immediately will cut this person off. This person will not listen to what I have to say. So any answer I have to think in these terms. So here we have a group of individuals right now at this live event who knows what we're talking about, yet it's going to be posted on YouTube afterwards, and God knows who's going to listen to this. So what I would say to that person is this: we completely misunderstand love the feeling and love the action. Two different things. Love the feeling is the result of first of sympathy. We like the same sort of things, affinity. You like the same kind of style of music, and then we start hanging out together. And then after a while, I start telling my problems, and then you don't tell my problems to anyone. So now I have trustworthiness, and after trustworthiness, we build up love from this, because you prove to me that I can trust you. Not only I can trust you, but you help on top of that. So I love you because you have helped me. That's love the feeling, in a summary, of course. Now, love the action is something that we can do towards anyone, even an enemy. So if I am a boss and I know an enemy of mine needs a job and I offer that guy a job, this is an act of love. So when I understand someone who thinks differently than I, it's an act of love. To have compassion means to suffer with. So when I understand someone, it means that I have delved into their world to understand where they came from. I apologize for telling here a little bit about myself, but in those 12 years that I worked in the jail system, I listened to these people's stories, and anyone would not agree with their actions, the things that they're doing outside to hurt others and to benefit themselves. Yet, if you listened to their past, they were raised in that environment. Their upbringing was about guns and drugs and violence and stealing and profiting and very selfish behavior. If you grow up in around that environment, if this is all you listen to your entire life, that is the norm. To be different, it's to be abnormal. So, but then the end result, you ended up in jail. Are you ashamed that you are in jail? No, you're not. You're even proud that you are in jail, because now you have acquired here a different level of your reputation in your community. But when you understand, you're able to help. You're able to give them some guidance with completely regard to their past. It doesn't mean that you agree with what they're doing. It doesn't mean that you're going to call the judge and says, listen, give them a different sentence because they have suffered from this. Not at all. We Spiritists, we learn the existence of the umbral, which is this place of atonement, and we should be aware that this place is not a place designed by the Supreme Intelligence to punish people. That is not the purpose of this place. The purpose of that place is for individuals to awaken, because they were not awakened through the words of love. So pain is going to awaken them. So it's an educational process. So when we understand someone, when we pray for them, when we understand them, when we are not enraged against them, these are different expressions of love. The love in action, not necessarily love the feeling. Because to love someone that truly wants to have me killed, to love someone who wishes that I get fired, I cannot have for that person the same emotion that I have for a friend who wants my well-being. So let's separate love, the action in love, the feeling.
100%, Júlio. Yeah, 100% agree.
Thank you.
Segue for another topic or question I see here, right? Dan and Júlio, how can we be more tolerant and try to foster more compassionate and more fulfilling relationships without being perceived as weak or complacent? And also, how can Spiritism help us there?
Why are we worried about being perceived as weak or complacent?
It's a great counter argument.
I think that is the first question that I think unveils a lot of the challenges we face. In general, I think that we are sometimes so worried at appearing to be something that we're not, that it puts us in a different spot. The truth is, I think that the hidden truth, like the big lie that we all go about in our lives every day, is that we think that everybody's got their act together, or we're so desperate sometimes to pass the impression and the image that we know everything, that we've got it all together. But the truth of the matter is that none of us have it all figured out. You really don't, right? All of us are struggling with different things. All of us have pains of different sizes. Everybody is going through different challenges that you can argue. Some people have more challenges than others. We can talk about that, and Spiritism would explain us why. But I think the important piece is for us to think about that. One of the hurdles that we need to break down is the fear of how we will be perceived by others. Because validation from the outside world will never be enough, will never be sustaining for us. So we have to learn how to go inside ourselves and find how to sustain ourselves. And as far as I know, the only force that can sustain itself is love, right? And love has many different manifestations, as Júlio was talking to us about. So I think that compassion is what we're seeking. But sometimes we're so afraid of exposing ourselves, of opening up to the other person, because we're afraid they're going to find out that we're not put together, that we hold ourselves back. I am afraid of really, opening myself to Júlio or Flavio, because I don't want them to think that I'm not smart or that I'm not kind. So I hold back, and I put a guard and a space between us, and sometimes we don't realize. And that makes it difficult to have compassion, because, as Júlio said, I have to be with you. I have to feel with you what you're feeling to have compassion. And as long as I put a barrier between us, it will be hard for us to get there. Nevertheless, what has helped me personally is to understand life through the Spiritist prism, right? When we look into the perspective of life through what Spiritism has given me, which is the certainty that life goes beyond the physical body, and that we're all immortal spirits, it has made it easier for me to understand that I am a work in progress. I have had many lifetimes, and I will have many more lifetimes before I get to a level where I'm a really good person, right? It's going to take time. And guess what? I begin to realize that's the same is for everybody around me. So I become a little bit less resistant to put up a guard. Doesn't mean that I don't do it. I still do it. I'm aware of that. But I'm a little bit less resistant because I now know that I am in a work in progress. And I know that you guys are a work in progress. And when I take it from that perspective, it helps me to be more tolerant, because I understand that Spiritism has broadened my perspective, my field of vision, if you will. I try to no longer think about just one lifetime. I try to no longer think about me just as the physical body, me, right? I try to wake up in the morning and say, all right, another day in the flesh. I'm an immortal spirit. Let me try to make the decisions that I can with a immortal spirit perspective. Do I succeed all the time? No. Do I forget? Most of the time. But I try. And that has helped me be more compassionate, because when I'm able to be more connected with others and have less of a guard up, I'm finding that I'm able to get closer to others because I'm not worried about what they're going to think of me. I can take time understanding them. So that has worked for me that way, but I would love to hear from Júlio. Júlio, what's your take on this?
Daniel, you spoke wonderfully, my friend. I don't think there's much that I can add on this subject, and I think they're anxious to present other questions.
Well, let me jump in then, since I showed up, right? So it is kind of connected because we're talking about connection, right, in relationships. So there's a question here, Júlio, that asks how to connect and build a relationship with no expectation towards somebody whose main method of communication is lies and manipulation. So a little bit of a, scenario where lies and communication, Flavio. Yeah, sorry. So Flavio, a scenario here where lies and manipulation are taking over the communication process. I'm not sure if it's in a work scenario or in a personal scenario, but this is the question: how to connect and build a relationship with no expectations towards someone whose main method of communication is lies and manipulation. To you, Júlio.
I think what we have to keep very clear in our minds is that we should be friendly and loving towards everyone. However, we should be very selective on who we're going to bring into our personal lives. Reason being, it's because the individuals that we surround ourselves with, consciously or unconsciously, we will absorb their behaviors in our own lives. If I mix with someone who uses drugs, there is a tendency of me to start speaking like that person, think like that person, and before I know it, I'll be getting high with that person. And I say this because there are so many women out there who can actually, they actually believe they can save their boyfriend from the addiction. And in my own personal experience, what ended up happening is that they actually got addicted with their boyfriends. So we should be very careful. If this individual is already showing to you that you cannot trust them, they're full of lies and manipulation, why in the world are you going to bring this person into your intimacy? And I'm not referring here to having sex with that person. I'm referring to bring that person into your personal world. You should not. You should, send them vibrations of love, pray for them. But I would advise you not to do that. Like I said, in our professional workplace, be acquainted with everyone. You go in with a positive attitude, you're optimist, and you give your best to everyone. However, your personal lives, your personal story, who you are as an individual, you should select very carefully who you open yourself up to. Because sometimes you find these individuals and they say, my life is an open book and everyone should know who I am. And I tell them, please close your books. I have already too much information in my mind about people. If we showed ourselves who we truly are to everybody, there will be a very selective group of individuals who actually like us because we all carry these imperfections within us. So be very selective as well, who you're going to bring into your personal lives. You can pray, befriend here. What I'm saying, you can have a good conversation with everyone. And since you're touching the topic, it's related to tolerance in some way. Once I read that Francisco Xavier, this Brazilian medium who we respect so much, that he had the habit of reading about just everything. And then someone asked him one day, why do you read all these different subjects? And of course, he read all these different subjects before he became an expert in the Spiritist literature. And then he said, well, I like to find the eye of the coconut. And someone asked him, what did you say? You like to find the eye of the coconut? Because he read, sports, he read the newspaper and he was abreast of all different subjects. And he said, the reason why I read all these different subjects is because I might have a conversation with someone. And then when I'm having that conversation, I like to find the eye of the coconut. And literally the coconut, if you try to get through to the juice of the coconut, you cannot get from anywhere. There is a specific part of the coconut that it's softer. And then you can actually put a needle over there and you get the juice. So all of us, we have the eye of the coconut, meaning there is a point in which you might have a conversation with someone that they like what you have to say. So this is not about who you are, who you're presenting yourself to be, but rather who they are. So you dive into their world. That way, we can have a conversation with just about everybody, and we become pleasing to them. This is not about imposing our beliefs on them. It's about listening to who they are. And once they get to like you, just because you understand the world, and then they might ask of your own perception on life, and then you tell them about the Spiritist philosophy, how good it is. But to impose on others, it's not a healthy thing. So if they're telling you they're very manipulative and full of lies, do not bring that person into your intimacy.
Thank you so much, Júlio. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Flávio.
I'm going to use what we do. For those folks who follow us on Spiritist Conversations, this is something I do quite often, right? So Danny, I'm going to throw this back to you. What if that person is already in your inner circle?
Well, I think that, Júlio addressed it very nicely, right? So we always have a choice. We have many different choices at any given point. You can not engage with that person, right? You can remove that person from your circle. But, most of us, sometimes when we're already are in that kind of relationship which maybe has gone awry, maybe is our family member or so forth, we shift a lot of the responsibility for that conversation and that relationship to that person, right? We automatically create stories in our minds on how the person always lies, how the person's always manipulative, right? And all those things. And those are value judgments that we make. It might be warranted. The person might really be doing that. But nobody lies 100% of the time, right? Nobody's manipulative 100% of the time. Even if they're 99% of the time, we also have to understand what is their motivation for doing that. So what helps me quite a bit, and again, what I like about the framework from Wurzburg, is that leads us to think about behavior as a result of a need not met. Why is the person lying so much? Sometimes it could be pathological, but these instances are rare, right? Well, not so rare this day and age, but you can start thinking about what is it that the person wants so desperately that it will go to great lengths to lie about it, right? And why is it that the person will go to great lengths to do other things? And when we see that person in that light, it changes how we perceive that person. It is no longer this big opponent or aggressor or somebody that hurts us. It's somebody who it's hurting in a specific way. It's trying to get attention or fulfill their needs one specific way. So it helps us demystify this idea of this great violent opposer, right? And I think what Júlio was saying was really beautiful, because you can see this, for instance, like people who are super strong, right? Like criminals, so to say, who are in jail, but who psychologically are not in that space of strength and posture that they generally do, right? They're actually quite hurting, and the way to make up for that is to overcompensate in other ways. So if you already are in such a relationship that you feel that is full with lies and manipulation, I think the first step is to ask yourself, like, what part do you play in this? Because relationships are always twofold. What part do you want to play in this, right? And try to engage in a conversation using such a framework that doesn't start the conversation with "you always lie, you always manipulate," because that's not going to take you anywhere, right? But to try to adjudicate, where is it that you land? Now, it might be that goes nowhere, because you can make the request, right? You can make the request from the person, but you also have to be prepared that the person will not answer your request, will not fulfill your request. And when that happens, you are left with one important lesson. What are you going to do? How are you going to accept that? Because sometimes we go through all this process, but our hope really is to change the other person. We tell ourselves that we're really trying to be, encompassing and everything else, but we really want to change the other person. And that's not going to happen. Nobody changes anybody else. We change ourselves. So if you are in that relationship, you can do your part. You work on yourself and you make your requests in a kind, compassionate way. But it might not work. It might not be enough. And when it comes to that point, you're going to have to make a choice. And I think Júlio did a great job there in saying, hey, not everybody has to be in our lives all the time. even if we want them to, there might not be a healthy situation for them to be in there. So if we make the request and we don't have our needs fulfilled and met, it's okay for us to walk away from that particular moment in time. And perhaps if we want to, try at another time. But there are tools, and there's we can also get outside counseling to help with this negotiation piece. There are a lot of different things that we can do. But at the end of the day, it's about us working on our perspectives, not about expecting somebody else to change. If we're expecting other people to change, it's going to be hard. We're pinning our happiness on other people. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah, 100%, right? We'll never change anybody. We'll only change ourselves so folks can look and perhaps be really, welcome or be invited to change, right? Based on what they see on ourselves. That's good. Juliana, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm back.
You're there. Do you have time for more questions?
Absolutely. So back at you, Júlio. Yes. So here's a question from somebody from Georgia. I'm very excited to see our folks participating. So thank you for your questions. Keep them coming. We still have time for some more. So, Júlio, here's a question from Mr. Santos. He asks, so tolerance, or he says first, tolerance is more of a social matter instead of religious. To address it in the Spiritist community is easier than to those who do not believe in reincarnation. How can we overcome that obstacle? So again, tolerance with the ones that are not Spiritists.
Not necessarily. That's the question, my friend Juliana. Tolerance with those who are, it's harder actually to have tolerance with Spiritists because we expect more of them.
Oh, expectation. There you go.
They know better. They should act differently.
Yeah, that's a problem. Expectation. Yes. That's true. Yes.
But I guess what our friend Santos attempted to ask was how to explain tolerance to someone who is non-believer in reincarnation. I really like to develop our thinking directly towards those who are free thinkers or who are atheists. A reason being is because if someone ever heard of Spiritism before, it's a lot to swallow. It's a lot to understand. So I would actually speak with that person in terms of benefits for them. For example, at your job, you have two choices. Either you hate this person or you tolerate this person. So let's see the consequences if you hate this person. If you hate this person, that means you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think is this person. As you're taking your shower to prepare to go to work, who are you thinking of? This particular person. You're driving to your work and you're thinking of this person. You get there and this person is there in front of you. And people are very sensitive. If they are atheists or not atheists, people can catch up on your behavior. And if this other person notices that they actually disturb you, by you hating them, by you showing to them how much they are disturbed, you actually feel their behavior as a feel. You're giving them more gas for that behavior to occur. And then what happens? You go home and this person is thinking of you, and you go to sleep and you're thinking of this person. And then when you actually dream, you are dreaming of this person. So I'll ask this individual, who is controlling you? Is it this person or you? So this is what you have. You have someone who is controlling you, but you are allowing this person to tell you how to live your life. That's what you're doing here. So this is not a wise thing to do. You're being very ignorant. And then this is where love comes in a very energetic way. I actually tell this person, you are ignorant. You are ignorant in the fact that you lack the knowledge to know that you're doing harm to yourself. And why in the world are you going to handle the power over of your life to this sickly, disturbed individual? What one has to realize in our life is that only unhappy people likes to make other people unhappy. So the other person is a very unhappy individual. So I'll go on to explain to this materialistic individual. I do not agree with what the other person is doing to you. I don't. I'm here in front of you, and my advice is for you. This is a disturbed, sick individual that you are allowing that person to contaminate you. Let me just open a parenthesis here in my argument. During this COVID-19 crisis, we heard so many lies, and the media took us in all different places about what to think of this coronavirus. But one thing is for sure, people were highly scared of being contaminated. So they got their masks on, they're bathing themselves with gel, they're setting themselves on fire, not to catch the virus. But then when it comes to mental disturbance, people easily allow others to contaminate them. That's what I would explain to this materialistic individual. You are allowing their mental disturbance to contaminate you. So the benefit here, it's for you. So what's the alternative? The alternative is you have compassion. How are you going to have compassion? Put yourself in that person's shoes and think if you were that person. Maybe that person is just envy of your success within the company. Maybe you started the same job with that person and you were promoted. In other words, you promote yourself, but that person didn't. And for that person, it's so easier to actually try to kick you out of your position instead of working hard as you did to achieve what you have. Maybe that person is not married and you are. You have a beautiful wife, you have a beautiful husband, you have children. That person was never married. So that person, when they look at you, your behavior, who you are, only shows to them who they never came to be. But the moral weakness comes from the fact that they lack the vision to see that this is themselves to be blamed for, not you. So they don't hate you because they're evil individuals. They hate you because they're morally weak. They wish they had what you have. So I'll make this person understand that this person is not an evil individual. And working for 12 years, I had to provide statistics to the prosecutors on a monthly basis, and I saw approximately 23,000 individuals provide psychotherapy. And I must confess, my friends, I rarely saw evil individuals in the jail system. I rarely saw evil individuals. And who do I define as being evil? Someone that takes pleasure in inflicting pain on others. I rarely saw that. What I saw was people with moral weakness, the ones that I had, placed in a very bad environment, which led them to poor decisions. That's what I saw. So you explain this to a materialistic individual, you could never even have the need to touch on topic of religion or spirituality whatsoever. It's about them. If this is a relative that you have to meet on a monthly basis, what's the alternative? You run away from Christmas, you run away from birthdays, you run away from Thanksgiving. Look how much you're missing just because you're allowing this person to drive you crazy. You should take control of your emotions and not give control to them. And at the end of the conversation like this, they would ask me, how come you learn how to think this way? And that's when the explanation of spiritism comes into place.
I thought you just reply. Júlio, I thought you were just going to reply with WWJD. What would Jesus do? That's my favorite answer, right? Every time we conflict, or we talk about that during the youth classes as well, right? What would Jesus do in that sense? In that, if you're going through trouble, or how can I apply spiritism to my life, right? Just use WWJD. What would Jesus do?
You see, Juliana, but once again, I'm so passionate about this subject because this is a perfect scenario here. The question is about for someone who is not religious whatsoever, So your answer, it's perfect for these individuals that are listening to us. But if someone who is outside of this realm, we truly forget the image that we have of Christ, even before we became spiritists. We forget that because it's been so long ago. So when we even say the word Jesus or Christ to anyone who's outside of this reality, immediately, they shut us off because they don't want to listen. Why? Because the association of Christ is with child molesters, people ripping off innocence for money, all of these negative associations. So the way we present Christ into the picture, it's very late. It's at the end of the movie. It's your last 2 minutes, just before you cross the line. And then they see, oh, wow, I never heard it that way.
Or how about just leaving the Spiritist book right at somebody's table, right? You just don't visit, you just forget your book at their coffee table. That might be a more subtle way to do that. Thank you so much, Júlio. And Flavio, I think we have maybe time for maybe just one more question. Back at you.
I know. It's that time we're approaching the end of this fun activity right here, right? This great conversation.
It's being recorded, so for the folks that did not have time to enjoy this live, they can just watch. So make sure you guys that are watching, forward that on to your relatives and anybody that you know that might benefit from watching these great topics and great conversations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ju, thank you for reminding us of that, right? So last question I should say, not first. Sorry, last question I should say that goes for both Dan and Júlio, right? How do I know what's expected of me? We all have different jobs, different commitments, different obligations, and etc. How do I know what Christ expects from me? Right? How do I apply Spiritism, which is the topic of our conference here? How do I apply Spiritism to my daily life? And how do I arrive at that state of consciousness and or enlightenment? And you only have 30 seconds to answer this. I saved the best for last. Woo! Dan, I think you're on mute, my friend.
I was saying, do you want to go or do you want me to go? I'll go. They put me on the big screen. I'm it, I guess. I think the question is, what do you really expect for yourself? Because we are full of perceptions and stories and assumptions of what other people expect of us. And while that is nice, Jesus, God, they expect things for you, but they don't demand things of you, right? They don't judge you, they accept you. Because if they judged us and accepted us and didn't accept us, we wouldn't be where we are today. We will be not in a so great place. We have wonderful things in our lives. They have an expectation, a soft one, an invitation for us to be perfect, to be better, and they're going to give us the opportunities. But I would try to focus, from my own experience, not to try to feel an outside expectation of what and who I should be, to try to go within and find out what is it that I think I need to do. We're always looking for an external solution to our problems. We're looking for a pill that's going to cure us. We're looking for a guru that's going to tell us what we need to do to be happy. And none of those things are going to be effective in the long term. Until we learn how to find our own answers and go inside and reflect about what is it that we want and what is it that we think we should do, we're going to struggle mightily, I think. And I think that's part of the challenge. We want quick fixes. We want outside solutions. And we're so craving that sometimes we just don't make space to listen to ourselves, to have a frank conversation with what is it that I want, to dig deeper about what are my needs, what am I feeling. Because the truth of the matter is, there isn't just one thing that you came to do in this life. There are many things that you can do, and you have a choice. You can go this way, you can go that way. Many times people ask me, what do you think is the purpose for my life? And I jokingly say around, what if the purpose of your life is to figure out what the purpose of your life is, right? What if there isn't a specific thing, but you get to decide? So I think that what Spiritism gives us in many different ways is a new angle to understand and break ourselves from this image of this Christ, this Jesus that Júlio was talking about, right? For better or for worse, generally for worse, through the ages, we have not done justice to the idea of Jesus. And because of that, people have come to know a Jesus that is not true, right? It's a human Jesus, it's a judging Jesus, it's a Jesus that commands people to do things that are not so nice. But Spiritism, through other means, have been able to give us a perception that as immortal, being immortal spirits that we are, that we're going to live on forever. And we get to know that Jesus is controlling and helping us figure all this stuff out. And we get to know a very different Jesus, and that helps. But I don't feel an expectation from Jesus for us to be anything else. What I hear in his words and the things that I read about him with this new lens is that he is inviting us, he's supporting us, and so is God, for that matter. So I am trying to spend more time trying to figure it out. What are my own expectations for myself? Because I generally find that my own expectations are more cruel and harsher than what I think other people's expectations are of me. So I have been learning to be a better friend to myself, more accepting of myself, and to understand that there's many different journeys and different ways of going about the same task and the same thing. And that if I make a mistake, that is okay. What I don't want to do is fall into a place of inaction where I figure like I don't need to do anything. That is what I prevent myself from getting to. But I try to spend time worrying about what is it that I think I should do. And I tell you, it's harder than at least for me, it's harder than I imagined. So my only suggestion for folks would be, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't think that there is such an outside pressure on yourself, because even the outside pressure is inside pressure. We create in our minds that outside pressure that might not be there. And to reflection through healthy conversations such as this one, having a chance to talk to Júlio, to Juliana, to Flavio, and to anybody else, to going and spending some quality time with folks at a Spirit Center, for instance, talking about these larger purposes, help me constantly exercise that spiritual muscle in my brain. So that would be my take. But fortunately, Júlio's going to come now and say something a lot wiser, and that way, we're good.
I think I'm going to be saved by the bell.
Go for it, Júlio.
Okay, so here we have that situation again. Who is my audience? For those of you who are spiritists, I would say read question 132 of the Spirit's book. What is the purpose of your incarnation? It's either a mission or an expiation. But for those of you who are materialists, or you have to explain this to a materialist friend, I would say that your mission is to develop yourself intellectually and morally, become a smarter individual and a better person. Because even if you strictly believe in that only and all exists, it's matter, you also believe in the perfection of that matter. And we should improve ourselves intellectually and morally. And in details, how do you do this? Well, read more books. We are so misinformed by what TV says. Read more books in a very practical way. How to become better individuals? For those of you who are spiritists, we know that those we have reincarnated with, they are actually an opportunity for us to develop our virtues. It's impossible, my friends, to develop virtues by ourselves. If we are meditating up in a mountain, we are surrounding ourselves with the serenity of the trees. But only when we come back from that mountain and we are on the daily living with those who present difficulties is that we develop our virtues. These are just muscles. You have to repeat the same movements over and over again. You have to repeat patience and compassion and tolerance and comprehension to develop the virtues that we need. So this is how we change completely our perception, because instead of seeing these individuals as people who are there just to provide your misery, they're there as an opportunity for you to develop your morality. Without them, it's impossible. If you were taken right now, my friend, to a perfect world, and let's say that for our own relativity, that perfect world would be Jupiter, of highly evolved spirits, you would not be happy there. And that would not be a convenient place for you, because there will be no one in Jupiter provoking you, trying to cause you misery. Therefore, you wouldn't be able to develop compassion. You won't be able to develop these virtues that can only be developed with people of the same level. So we are in the perfect school called Earth at the Spiritist Center. And let me say this very carefully. Please get away. Get rid of the expectations. That will be a perfect group of individuals working together. That does not exist on this planet.
Whoa, we're all perfect here.
If,
You're Georgia.
hold on a second, I'm going to hang up then. I know this is going to be perfect.
That does not exist. If we are in a group of individuals, that group, by definition, would have people who think differently than you. And that is the perfect environmental condition for you, for all of us to develop these virtues that we much need to experience what we crave for, peace. And I'll finish with this. Peace and happiness are two different things. Peace, in Spiritist terms, is the fulfillment of our obligation. So at times, the fulfillment of our obligation is to be with someone who's difficult. And are you happy with someone who's difficult around you? Obviously not. So the Spiritist literature teaches us to postpone happiness for the cause of peace, because by fulfilling our obligation, we'll truly be happy instead of running away from everyone who's difficult. And what's going to happen later on, we will find ourselves in these same relationships, but with an accrual debt for abandoning them in the past. In closing, in chapter 28 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, there's a whole section, the prayers for others. And one of the not so much spoken part of these prayers are actually the comments by Allan Kardec to prepare us for the prayer. And when the comments in the prayer to pray for someone who's your enemy, in the comment, he asks us to ponder first if this animosity that you have with this person was not actually created by you. Because when we think in terms of the past, we always think that this other person did something to us instead of being the other way around. That will help us to be tolerant as well. I want to thank the hosts. Juliana, you were super kind. Flavio, always super happy. And all of those who were involved. And I want to commend my friend Daniel again for his book. It's achievement for all of us. And it's always a pleasure, my friend. It's an honor for me to share the screen with you.
Right back at you, friend. Thank you.
Thank you and Dan for your time, your precious time away from your beautiful families. We thank all of you who have been with us for the last 2.5 hours. So give or take, right? We also thank Juliana, all the workers, all the supporters, all the volunteers that have worked diligently, right, in order to put an event like this together. We know it's the same as if we were face to face, but I think the afternoon went amazingly well. Who else do we need to thank, Juliana? Anybody we're missing?
We actually decided not to say names because if we were to say one name, we would choose Jesus. Jesus the boss.
You got it.
Yes.
So we thank Jesus. And what's a good way to thank Jesus rather than showing one interesting poem that was written on the Spiritist magazine from 1861? And I think there's a video for that. So our tech folks, can we roll the video, please?
How can I, O mortals, with my weak accents, give your hearts the most sublime incense? You will learn from these verses during this career how to pray and the meaning of prayer. It's a surge of love, a fluid fervor that escapes the soul and rises toward our Savior. Sublime infusion of the humble creature returning to his source, ennobling his nature. Praying does not change the Creator's art, always immutable, but the paternal heart spreads its divine stream upon the one who implores and doubles the heart of the fire it devours. He then feels elevated, growing. Through the love to the neighbor, the heart is pounding. The more he grows in love, the more of the sublime being fulfills his heart with the blessings of learning. Then comes a holy desire to pray for the dead, carrying their burden of pain, a bitter regret, showing the needs their condition claims. He then addresses to them his invisible balms, whose efficacy, consoling remedy, penetrates their soul, giving them liberty. They revive. It's a new hope, a glimmer. Helping in their struggle, freedom they conquer. Like the mortals, overwhelmed by the evil, that a supreme balm returning to normal, they regenerate before this impulse, a cult, from the majestic and ardent prayer and its divine cult. Let us multiply the enthusiasm. Nothing is lost, my friend. Prayers for them, prayers to the end. Prayer, it is always prayer. The divine spark that becomes the focus of love and overwhelms afar. Let us pray for the dead. Yes, and before long, and from above outpours upon us the rays of love. Joy.
All right. So, thank you all, folks. I love the little heart thing. And before we drop, we'll see you next year. We're gonna have a conference again next year. Hope to really bring this amazing, amount of speakers and even other ones to the conference next year. For those of you who speak Portuguese, there's what happens tomorrow, Júlio?
Yes. So tomorrow, I know that many Americans are married to a Brazilian wife, right? That's how we get a lot of the Americans into the Spiritist Center. They are brought by their Brazilian wives. So there we go, Brazilian wives. And anybody else that speaks Portuguese, please join us tomorrow, okay, at the same time. So 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join us tomorrow. We have 2 amazing Brazilian speakers that will be speaking Portuguese. And please join us tomorrow, same time, same channel. Spiritist Conference of Georgia. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for the Portuguese track, okay?
Fantastic. And also thanks to our dear supporters and volunteers once again. And before we drop, a quick prayer in gratitude to our Heavenly Mother and Father God, to our dear Jesus, our professor, our friend, our psychotherapist, our beloved brother who's been with us since the beginning of times. We thank you for this opportunity. We also thank you, Jesus, for all the difficulties, all the problems, all the issues that we have in our lives today, because we're sure that thanks to your guidance, thanks to your help, thanks to your assistance, we'll overcome them all. Thank you all for the opportunity once again. May we be with you connected, hip to hip, for now and ever. So be it. Thank you all, folks. Have an amazing rest of your Saturdays, amazing rest of your weekends. God bless you all.
Thank you.